I want to welcome everybody today to reduce overwhelm and stress through digital wellness. And it's very exciting to me because I know that a lot of us are feeling the weight of our screens. We're always on our screens, whether it be our phones or our computers. And even despite the fact that we are here today Zooming to you, I think it's important for us to really pause together and, take note of how we're using our screens or how our screens might be controlling a lot of what we're doing during the day and getting into our psyches and causing us to feel more overwhelmed and more stressed than we really should. My name is Jennifer Norman. I'm the founder of the Human Beauty Movement. We're also known as the HBM. And the HBM is all about the idea of radical self-love, radical self-acceptance, radical self-expression. Beauty for us is an inside job, and so is caring for our well-being. And so I'm honored to introduce you to our host, Yasmin. Adam is a former UX designer turned digital wellness coach. He's a strong advocate of slow tech as a means to wellness. And he's also an aficionado of Chinese tea culture as well as a loving dad. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Adam. Take it away.
Thanks so much, Jen. And thank you to anyone who is here, is present, or will be watching this in the near or far future for posterity. It's a funny moment to take stock in talking about this somewhat delicate subject of burnout and tech overwhelm or tech addiction and digital well-being while we're on these platforms trying to figure out how things work and the back end. All of these we definitely recognize that there are more ways than one to accomplish this. This is a really special session because it's a session that doesn't involve a slideshow. It doesn't involve a premeditated journey, so to speak, a visual journey. Not that there's anything wrong with slideshows. They're very informative. But when it comes to the very subject of digital well-being, I feel as though stats and numbers do more, they ruffle more feathers than I'd like to just in a conversation or in just a transmission of information, of embodied experience. Because when we start looking at the numbers, which are real, it's not as though I want to take the stats as they are and then sort of stick my head in the sand like an ostrich and pretend as though they don't exist. We, as a society, as Americans based here in the States, we're hovering around an average of 5 hours of smartphone usage per day. And that's across a really large swath of ages and demographics. And that's definitely it's stemming from, living through this pandemic, having had our digital lives be utterly transformed during the early days of lockdown. By one measure, I think the quote was, we've had 2 years of digital transformation in the scope of 2 months. So a lot of things had evolved very quickly through this first 6 months of lockdown. The term hybrid work was coined in a post-remote work world. A lot of things have happened, and they're still evolving as we speak right now. Here we are coming towards the month of February in 2023. So the way I like to start these transmissions is to have a grounding check-in. And so wherever you may be, if you're at your desk at work, if you're at home, if you're seated, perhaps you may be reclining, wherever you are, just get comfortable. If you can, either put your feet on the ground, or if you're sitting cross-legged, that works as well. Again, it's just a matter of paying attention to your spine and your posture. But if you feel comfortable, if you feel able to, whether you're using earbuds or headphones or not, or you're alone, or you're sharing a working space with other people, just find an opportunity to get comfortable and to get receptive. And if you can, close your eyes and just focus on arriving. All you need to do is just be exactly where you are and just breathe. And when it comes to calming breath, I highly recommend inhaling through the nose and exhaling through the mouth or through the nose. And so where we're sitting making this transmission, it is currently late morning here in California. But wherever you may be, perhaps it's the evening or the afternoon or after lunch or after dinner, wherever you are, just drop in and just take some breaths. Just begin to notice how you feel seated in front of your device. How does it feel in your body? Perhaps you notice any tension, or perhaps you notice yourself relaxing as you breathe. Perhaps you notice thoughts coming in and then see them going out as well. Just remember that whatever you were doing before this call, or whatever you have to do after this, it's going to be there. It's going to wait patiently for you. And so as you get comfortable and notice how you feel in your body, just begin to notice the environment that you're in. Again, your eyes are closed or open, it's up to you. Perhaps you notice some other sounds in the room, or you notice some smells. Maybe there's a cup of coffee or tea near you, or the smells of, post-breakfast or post-meal. Maybe there's a window open and you hear the sounds of the street or the world outside. Just notice these sensations. Notice your senses. Notice yourself sensing your senses. And let's take another 2 or 3 breaths in this receptive state. Maybe you can pause for a few seconds once you reach your inhale before you exhale. And let's do our last breath together. And as you exhale, just kind of make a little bit of an exaggerated exhale. Kind of helps release any sort of latent and subtle tension that may be there. So now I welcome everyone to come back into the space, open your eyes, and as you do that, notice 3 things around you. In my case, I notice a microphone, a desk, and a window. So it just kind of gets you grounded back in the room, back into your body, back into this space, this call, and this transmission. So the purpose of this session is to address reducing overwhelm and stress, particularly through strategies and resources and tools when it comes to digital well-being. So what is digital well-being? Sometimes a term like this can feel a bit vague. A term like this maybe hasn't been addressed, you know. So specifically, I know we've seen news headlines, or we've watched documentaries, or there are books published about the subject, but not a lot is to be said or spoken to, particularly when it comes to the subject itself. So digital well-being, as it's been defined by the Digital Wellness Institute, which is where I got my certification as an educator, is defined as the optimal state of well-being that any individual using technology is capable of achieving. It's a bit of a billboard kind of a definition. And I, in my journey as a dad, as a designer, as someone working in tech, and then transitioning into coaching and education, it's my personal passion and mission as a service provider to really find ways to actually distill that definition down into lived experience, practices that we can engage in. So there's many places to begin this type of self-inquiry, but it's important that we just begin with engaging with ourselves in a process of self-inquiry. Sometimes we can do that alone via journaling. Other times we do that with a coach, right? With an accountability person, perhaps in a working group, maybe even with your therapist or counselor, if that's the type of guidance and work you would like to explore. But one way I like to introduce this subject to people, to groups that I'm coaching, or to individuals as well, is through these kind of fundamental steps towards self-awareness in a manner of practice that really don't involve any investment other than your time well spent. So one of the first things I like to introduce to people when it comes to utilizing digital well-being, again, just the notion of digital well-being, let's think about it in terms of, think about the sort of pillars we gauge our health and well-being by. There's food and nourishment or diet, there's movement, exercise, there's sleep and rest, and there's knowledge and study and education. We really need to consider our digital habits along with these other pillars, because by now, 3 years into this pandemic, I think we've definitely recognized that we are living as nearly as cyborgs with these devices, either on our person or near us or at arm's length at all times. Now, there's a lot of benefit that comes with utilizing these tools. These are powerful tools. A smartphone is a computer and a GPS and a window into heartfelt, deep connection through video chats with friends and loved ones, or with colleagues or mentors or teachers, right? These are powerful tools that can have profound change and uplift and benefit to our lives. They also happen to be designed in ways that double down on, really just capitalist tendencies, right? We are engaged in social media platforms that are rooted in the attention economy, meaning that when we use a platform like, let's say, Instagram or Facebook that are free to use, it's our eyeballs and our attention that generates ad revenue for Facebook and Instagram's real customers, which are advertisers. So again, it's the knowledge, it's knowing that can help us make decisions based on our values to use these tools with a little bit of wisdom, hopefully some humility in there as well, and just practice and playfulness, and hopefully a spirit of experimentation that we can constantly approach habit formation or upgrading habits at any point, right? Even though we as humans are creatures of habit and we can get really entrenched in sleeping with our phones on our nightstands, in our bedrooms, by our pillows, maybe next to our pillows, we can change those habits. So keeping that in mind, I want to touch on the first step that I like to introduce to people when it comes to really engaging in digital well-being as a kind of a daily practice. And that first step is really pausing. It's really can be really challenging to do because you hear a ping or you hear your notification sound, or if your phone or device is on your person in your pocket, you may feel a buzz or haptic vibration, and you're immediately, it's a Pavlovian effect. We're immediately want to get a dopamine hit to know like what's just come to us, who is seeking our attention. Was it an email? Is it a tweet notification? Or it could be any one of a multitude of notifications. But so the necessity of being able to pause before we respond, before we react, is, again, it's the first it's not the first step in terms of importance. It's just like it's the first step towards really regulating these things. And it doesn't cost anything except just the commitment to make it second nature. So one of the great kind of reset ways to reset this for ourselves is to mute or to turn off notifications, so that we may allow ourselves to act, to use our devices with intention, to be mindful of what we're using, when we're using it, why we're using it, and for what purpose. If we could start to engage with ourselves almost in like in a conversation or with one another, to be able to pause before we respond, to be able to pause before we just reach for, or it's even it may not even be a sound, right? Just the mere presence of the device itself, perhaps in your peripheral vision, or maybe on your desk, on your workstation. Even just walking by it, you may want to, oh, wait, maybe someone did send me something, and so I want to reach for or look at it. So again, just to touch on the importance of pausing as a mechanism of both self-awareness and self-inquiry, but also as a way to balance out, begin to balance out, begin to just, it's almost like an invisible boundary, right? It's just that as soon as I sense something coming in, or I think I want to reach for it, or I'm actually hearing a sound or a ping or a vibration, just pause for a second. And maybe you can write it down as a script. Maybe just ask yourself one question as you pause. Maybe you decide it's not even a question I want to ask myself. I just want to make sure I just take a breath before I respond to the thing or look at what is seeking out my attention. For some people, it's I want to ask myself, wait a second, how am I feeling? Am I feeling an emotion that's going to change how I react to this notification or this email or something? Again, maybe you can change this question or change this pausing tactic over time, right? There's no reason to be rigid or sort of set a hard rule when it comes to this tactic. But that is again just to frame it from a place of emotional well-being, the ability to pause before responding to something, pause to check in how I'm feeling before making a decision or responding or reacting to something, or adding my opinion to something or a comment thread, is a profound sort of invisible step and when it comes to sort of self-care. So that's the importance of pausing. The second step is more of a physical representation, like a boundary, and that is to plug your phone away from you in different parts of your day. And in another way, I'm saying to take breaks, to kind of habituate taking breaks. And that could be, we could feel more confident to do so if we have a physical barrier, physical distance from our device. So here's a couple of basic examples. Again, this doesn't cost anything. We don't have to buy a device or engage in a subscription in order to block these things. Those services and products also exist, and they're also robust tools if that is your choice, right? I'm not going to talk anything down or say that one thing is better or worse than another, right? We are all different learners and achievers, and there are a multitude of tools and products and services to achieve similar goals. So one example is, like I said earlier, is plug your phone overnight outside of your bedroom, is to sanctify the bedroom for rest, relaxation, romance, whatever your list is, whatever your priorities are. But to sanctify the bedroom, if it means getting an alarm clock, there's an alarm clock for every budget, in every shop. But the importance of having that really hard boundary with your phone outside of your bedroom is, first and foremost, do you really want to eat notifications for breakfast? I know I don't. How do you really feel when your head is still on your pillow and your phone has woken you up and you're looking at your phone, your head's still on your pillow, and here's this whole swath of notifications and things that are trying to get at your attention? You haven't left the bed yet. You haven't woken up. You haven't arrived. You haven't stretched or had a glass of water, or maybe sat in meditation for 5 minutes, or even like said hello to your significant other, or hug your child, or brush your teeth, or had breakfast. I'm listing off all these things as a potential buffer zone of a morning ritual that is, I believe, as an educator and as someone is living through this experience, it is a well of nourishment to be able to have this buffer zone away from your phone first thing in the morning. Because again, if your head's on your pillow and you're looking at your phone, it's woken you up and you see all these notifications, you're immediately bringing in stress hormone, higher levels of cortisol. You're immediately in fight or flight mode, whether you recognize it or not. This is what's happening. And then we're taking that first hit of fight or flight and stress into the rest of our day. And it may not leave us for the entirety of our day. Again, we may not be aware of how we're feeling as we're using these things, as we're responding, reacting. I get bad news. I feel a lot of emotions. I have to finish working. I have to go shopping and feed my family. And it's just this kind of never-ending stream of stress. I'm just speaking in a little bit of hyperbole, just as a exaggeration. We're also really good at managing stress as well. I want to just point that out there, right? We're all individuals with unique experiences and unique emotional makeups, and we, having all of us lived through this pandemic the last 3 years, we're all really exceptional at managing stress. So just to put that out there as well. But let's get to the root of this. If we, again, establish a hard boundary with our devices the first thing in the morning. So that hard boundary can look like, okay, the phone is plugged in into a different bedroom. You have this elegant obstacle, right? The elegant obstacle of, I'd have to get up and walk and go reach for the phone, which is plugged into that wall or that table or that room, a different room in the house. That buffer zone means that's me time. That's us time. That's time to take care of ourselves and take care of our families or our significant others before we reach for the phone. Imagine if we reach for the phone after that buffer zone as a reward. Cool. I'm now on office hours. I've taken care of myself. I've had breakfast. I've taken my daughter to school. I've had, if it's 5 minutes or 30 minutes with my significant other or wife or husband, that's time well spent. And then you can reach for the device and start to get things done, start to perform tasks. That's a big one. Again, it doesn't cost anything, perhaps maybe the purchase of an alarm clock, but that aside, it's a big one, and it can be really challenging. It can be really confronting. It can be really intimidating as well, right? Some of us don't have the luxury of spending 30, 60 minutes in the morning before, getting to sort of performing tasks. Okay, I want to be respectful of all these truths and these lived experiences. If it's 5 minutes or if it's 55 minutes, whatever it is for you, whatever that buffer zone can be, you will feel the effects of it almost immediately, versus like 3 weeks down the line or 3 months down the line, or maybe if we talk in 3 years. Let me know how that's going for you. I'd love to hear it. So that's the second step, is creating these physical boundaries, right? Another way of saying it is creating a phone-free zone, or more than one in the house. The bedroom being one of them, maybe the bathroom can be another one. Again, because these things are on our person all the time, it's easy to walk into the bathroom and then you're on your we're on our phone in the bathrooms. We haven't had any time to even just perform the most basic, fundamental, menial, tasks as human mammals. So just think about what those breaks, those hard boundaries, can look like. That's a lot of information. And I also just want to take a moment to offer, again, within the context of this transmission, is to actually take a moment to engage in a little bit of self-reflection. And that can easily look like having a piece of paper and a writing utensil, or you can use, if you're on your computer or a laptop or a tablet or whatnot, you can also use maybe your handheld device. I like to use voice memos instead of writing. I don't really have a writing utensil that's handy. I'm also more of an auditory learner. That's something I know about myself. So I like to use voice memos to get thoughts down. So any way you'd like to, you could pause this. If you're going to be watching this in the future, maybe pause, grab a writing utensil and a piece of paper or a pad, and let's engage in a bit of self-inquiry for just a moment. And it looks like this. Take 1 minute to vent and kvetch and complain and just kind of get your frustrations out on paper when it comes to what you feel frustrated or triggered by when it comes to your device usage. Again, it could be a reflection, a self-reflection. It could be this app is difficult to use, whatever it is. Just take a minute to get all that out. Don't worry about sentence structure, just stream of conscious, 1 minute. Just kind of get that out. Again, it can be confronting. It can be a little bit challenging to just get in that mode, having just absorbed information. But let's just take 5 seconds to wrap that up. Just to have it there, you physicalized it. It's somewhere outside of your body and mind. It's outside of your psyche. It's right there. You can look at it. You can hold it. So now I recommend, again, for people who are going to be watching this in the future, I would pause the video and just take 2 minutes to just get back in your body. Take some deep breaths, maybe stand up, get up from your chair, step away from your desk, do a stretch. I'll do a stretch for a second as well. Even if it's just as simple as, just kind of you just kind of bend over, reach for your toes, feel your lower back, and take a really deep breath and just kind of reach for the sky. And then you can put your arms back down to your sides. Even if it's just 30 seconds of that, it's just a pattern interrupt. We can get back on our chairs, or perhaps you need to use the restroom or get a glass of water. Either way, just take 2 or 3 minutes to just be back in your body. And so we did this 1 minute, prior to pausing this, we did this 1 minute of getting all the kind of venting about our frustrations and challenges when it comes to tech use. I want to now flip it on its, flip the coin or flip the card. And I want to offer everyone to take another minute with another piece of paper, either or whatever, the same paper or a different one. Now let's write down and share and engage in the stream of conscious of writing about things that we are grateful for when it comes to our devices or our tech use, things we feel empowered by. Just kind of get that out for 1 minute. Again, this can be profound. Once you start to get it out, it can be equally confronting or challenging. Why would I want to think about things I'm grateful for when it comes to these devices? They're, designed poorly or whatever, again, whatever the thought going into it may be, but just think of the things you're grateful for that you have the ability to do with these devices. Cool. Let's take another few seconds to get that down. and come back in. So we've taken these two initiatives to engage in a little bit of self-inquiry and these writing prompts or voice memo prompts, however you want to engage in that. And we've done that for the reasons of habituating, checking in with ourselves, checking into our emotional states. And as we do this work, we are kind of weaving these threads of, I check in with myself, how I'm feeling about past events or how I'm feeling in the moment. And then I'm, the other thread that we've been weaving in this, the first half of this session was doing it about our device usage, right? Or about the devices themselves. So the goal is to weave these two threads together so that we are able to either make a habit of checking in to our emotional states at any point in the day for any reason. If I'm in a good mood or a bad mood or something, I'm in a crisis or I'm in a restful state, just to know what's going on there for ourselves, but also importantly, when it comes to digital well-being, to do so when it comes to our usage, the way we relate to these devices. Again, I don't think these things are evil. I think they are designed with perhaps some poor intentions or not a lot of forethought. But the devices themselves are not, they are indeterminate. They're not good or bad. It's just a tool, right? It's just a tool. And how we use those tools dictates how we relate to them. Just think of a hammer, right? Hammers are really useful when you need to get a nail into a wall, right? Useful tool. Are you going to use it at all? Are you going to take it and use it at all times of day? Not necessarily. Maybe if you're working construction or you're fixing your house, that might be a different case. And again, it's not really an even comparison to a phone to a hammer, but they're both tools. That's one thing that we can potentially agree on. So we've talked about some fundamentals. We've done a couple of writing prompts. We definitely started this call with a grounding check-in. And, Jen, I'd like to invite you back into this because so much of what I do when it comes to digital wellness education, or if I'm coaching a group or a team or an individual, so much of it is really needs to be a conversation. So because usually what happens is I always leave time, really important time for Q&A. And so I'd love to kind of bring that back in, for the posterity of any listeners or watchers who are going to be, taking this in and thinking about these practices as they go forward. So I'd just love to bring you in and
Absolutely.
get back into.
Absolutely. Yes. I think that so much of what you have spoken about is vitally important for people to just take pause and to remember about their digital habits, how our phones have become somewhat of appendages on our own bodies. You called us cyborgs, and that's not untrue. And being more mindful about taking the time away, giving ourselves breaks, giving ourselves those moments of getting back into our bodies rather than just habitually in Pavlovian fashion, looking at our phones, being a slave to the notifications and all of those things. Because, we're natural human beings. I feel like the more that we can stay in touch with nature, that will help us to expand our creativity. And just as you said, devices are wonderful. They are tools. There are so many benefits and so much innovation. I had written down during the moments of self-reflection all of the positive things that I am grateful for. And in many cases these days, especially, I'm just in awe of the technology and what it can do, and some of the advancements that we as humans have been able to put into these to spread knowledge, to spread creativity, to make it much more democratic as far as allowing people the ability to create at any level, at any entry level. You can make your own way. You can figure out new things. There are whole new jobs and industries that are being created around the idea of being able to connect and to share of yourself in many ways. And so those things should be celebrated. Those things are great. And there gets to be that tipping point, I think, of when you are involved in it and then you let it overtake you. And
Mm,
that's where the overwhelm and the stress and the keeping up and that whole hamster wheel starts to happen, I think. And knowing those feelings somatically in the body, being
mm,
able to recognize that tension, just as you said, when you wake up and you see a notification or you see your phone next to your bed. I think that, the biggest rule and the hardest thing to do is the willpower to just put the phone in the other room and not have it next to
totally.
you on the nightstand. I know that's something that I'm still working on. But yeah, that's something that I think every digital wellness person will say is like rule number one: do not sleep with your phone. Do not sleep with your phone. And so
And rule
even
number
that,
one is the hardest rule. It's the
yeah,
hardest thing to do. I
it is
always
the
say that.
hardest thing to do because we're so used to it. But yeah, maybe 2023 is the year that we all agree collectively we are not going to sleep with the phones next to our pillows. We're not going to sleep
Mm,
with it on our nightstands. And so, I, for one, am raising my hand right now and I'm making the commitment on this day that I am no longer going to sleep with my phone. And now that I've spoken it out loud, it's got to happen. And so it is, right?
I am your witness. I support you.
Everybody here is
And
my witness. So there
absolutely,
it is. I'm gonna
absolutely.
do it. And sometimes that's what it takes. It takes that accountability.
Mhm.
Otherwise it's like, well, no one's gonna, be checking up on me, or what's the harm in it? But surely if you can do that, if you can have that willpower, as silly as it sounds, but yeah, it's just those things that are seemingly small, but ultimately huge when it comes to your well-being, right?
Absolutely. And I also, in full transparency, I'm no saint when it comes to just that very foundational step. Again, it's not a rule, but just a guide, if you will. But here's the way I made just to offer it here into the space. The one way I made uh, you know, still utilizing my phone as an alarm clock per se, right? That's just the example. Is I've turned off all notifications. So nothing is waiting for me. Nothing is going to be waiting for me unless I allow it in. Right. So I've done it's again, it's that took time for me to actually sit with, turning everything off, sitting with it, evaluating what's important. Obviously, like as a person, as a partner, as a dad, I can't have everything literally turned off. I need phone calls coming through in case of emergencies, or text message in case of emergencies, right? If you can sit with and evaluate, that's I mean, just that alone is another session dedicated entirely to that. It's like a workshop on how to evaluate notifications, how to turn them off, and how to let in, how to allow in what's actually important, like what you value is important, and you limit it to like 3 to 5 things. And also utilizing do not disturb mode, screen time features, airplane mode, whatever you want to, because all those tools are baked into the operating system now. And I'm speaking specifically to, Apple's iPhones, but there's also a lot of these similar screen time features that are baked into Android OS as well. But it's like they're there. We need to actually engage with those settings, right? And those settings, again, they're malleable. You can change them and you can reevaluate them over time. So, just in all full transparency, I have notifications off and I have my phone in airplane mode. So it's just basically, it's an alarm clock that I can put anywhere. And so and it's not by my pillow, it may be on the floor. It's at least like I have to actually physically like go reach for it or get out of bed. So there are times in which I lean on that. Again, I'm not saying that as a recommendation to do, but I will say that literally just using it for that one purpose, and not allow, again, gatekeeping. Be empowered to be a harsh gatekeeper, right? This is your time, your attention, your energy, your stress levels. It's your life. Do you want these apps to be by default giving you notifications? No, you don't. Great. So we go into settings, notifications, and you can toggle everything. You have really granular levels of control. We just have to take the time. We have to invest the time in order to tweak these settings and to make the phones work for our lives based on our values and our lived experience. And another thing I wanted to say that you mentioned just in your response a moment ago, taking breaks from our screens or having these boundaries away from our screens are going to look and feel very different for everyone. There's a really informative book that I read by a computer scientist named Cal Newport. It's called Digital Minimalism. Great book. He definitely spells out the importance, and he brings a lot of historical context and kind of behavioral science and computer science background into what he calls like really taking a 30-day social media detox or a device detox, which, having read it the first year of the pandemic, that is almost impossible to do right now. Maybe it would have been more possible 5 or 7 years ago. It may not be. So a digital detox, as as people may understand that term or label differently, it may not be so possible to do. We don't all have the ability to go on vacation or go on retreat and be unplugged, for 4 to 7 or 10 days. Those of us who can, I salute you. Those of us who can't, I also salute you, because we just need to find the ways in which to do that for ourselves day to day. As a person who grew up, in the Jewish faith and heritage, there is a practice of the Sabbath or Shabbat, right? Every Friday to Saturday night, there's Shabbat, there's a Sabbath, right? The culture, what's dictated in the culture is we turn everything off. We don't engage in buying anything or consuming anything. It's just a day to unplug, basically. So anyone can take that notion of the Sabbath and just call it a digital Sabbath. If it means either the thing is off and I'm unreachable and I can just read and rest or sleep or eat food and watch movies with my family, whatever that's going to be, you can make that a thing for you and your family or your household in your own way. Or if you can't take an entire day off of your device, maybe you can schedule time into your calendar, right? If you have your life mapped out on your calendar and you have these time slots, schedule 30 or 60 minutes somewhere in your week, at least once a week, to just put a question mark. Just in your calendar, just leave it at question mark. So maybe you can engage in different hobbies. Maybe you can, one week I go on a walk around the neighborhood. Another week I have a lunch date with a friend or a colleague. And another week I'm going to just take a nap, because resting is important, because we need to, as best as we can, pay attention to our bodies and to love them. And each other in the process as well. So again, a screen-free break or a digital detox. These are, just take these terms with a grain of salt, just to be playful with it. Okay. I've been a student of Chinese tea culture for 15 years. I have a dedicated tea practice. It requires all of my attention, all of my reverence, all of my patience, and all of my fingers and my hands. It's a full analog experience. That's my screen-free break. What's it like for you? It doesn't have to look like that. It could look differently. Maybe you like to bake sourdough or cook a meal, or you have this coffee brewing method that you're into, whatever it is. But just more often, you find ways to just like, oh, cool, I wasn't even paying attention to being on my device. I didn't feel like I needed it, because I'm giving myself permission to be mindful of when I want to use it, how I want to use it, why I want to use it, what is the task, and then when can I put it down and do something else. So with these last 5 minutes, yeah, I just want to take a second to just to show my gratitude to you, to the Human Beauty Movement, to creating a platform for sharing these discussions, for having the ability to converse about these topics, because they are, I do believe, and again, it's kind of a subjective way of saying, I do believe that these are important topics because it affects everyone. If you're a child, if you're a parent, if you're a coworker or a CEO or an entrepreneur, if you're in education, like, it's this complex issue has touched everyone's lives. And where in the universe we exist in the society and culture we live in, there are FDAs, and there are sort of regulating bodies that can set rules and regulations for other points, other touch points in our lives, like food and movie ratings and all these things. Like, there really isn't anything like this for what we are consuming on the internet, right? The internet is, just can stop and consider that for a moment. The internet is a Wild West type of a place that is, I'd say it's fairly unregulated. And so it is, the responsibility is left to us to regulate how we relate to the devices, what kind of content we bring into our lives or our homes, how much time we spend, in these kinds of in consumption states. And we are always faced with sometimes we have to shoulder, the heaviness and the responsibility of doing that regulating, doing that gatekeeping. And I believe, again, at times it can be really challenging, right? If I'm lying down in bed with a bout of COVID, I'm going to be watching a bunch of movies and having a bunch of phone calls, probably having more screen time than I feel like I want to, but I do feel I'm connected with the people that I'm engaged with, or the content that I'm watching, because I want to be isolated, from my family or from other people, or don't want to go into the supermarket. Or again, these are choices that we're making. We are making and have to make all the time. So I hope that's that's concise when it comes to just starting to engage in these self-awareness practices, engaging and thinking about, again, if we think about food, movement, sleep, rest, and knowledge, let's also think about our digital lives, our habits, and how we relate to these devices, and how we can change and upgrade those relationships at any point. That's I'm gonna stop there.
Adam, thank you so much. And you're exactly right. The human beauty movement is really all about the beauty of that self-awareness and self-empowerment, so that you can truly live the life that you want to and that you deserve. And part of that self-awareness and self-empowerment is recognizing when outside and external influences are encroaching upon your well-being. and encroaching upon your ability to be truly you because you feel like you need to keep up, or you feel that, there's just this anxiety or anxiousness about delivering on the expectations of others. And so the nice thing about a forum like this is that you're giving us your expertise on things that we can be mindful of in order to stay fully present unto ourselves and make sure that we know that we are in control, we are empowered beings over everything in our lives. We are not slaves to anything. And so let us free ourselves of those invisible bonds that we have, use them when we need to as a tool, but then put them aside when we want to engage with our family, with the people that are in front of us, with our lives, with nature, and just really, appreciate all of it. Appreciate all of the beauty that you are, appreciate all of the beauty that's in front of us and that we've been given. So Adam, thank you so much for being part of the movement. Thank you everybody who is watching and joining us today and in the future. Please visit us on thehumanbeautymovement.com. We have lots more great events for your beauty and wellness coming up, and we'll look forward to seeing you around. Thank you, Adam.
Thanks, Jen. Bye, everyone.